7 out of 10 people are being left behind. That is not a slogan. That is not a dramatic line designed to wake you up. That is a diagnosis. 7 out of 10 people in this country are living paycheck to paycheck. Stop for a moment and let that settle in. Drive down any ordinary street in America. Look at 10 houses, and 7 of them, the people inside are running as hard as they can and still feeling the month closing in around them. They are working, they are earning, they are trying, and still they are being left behind. That is the part that troubles me most, because most of them are not lazy, most of them are not stupid, most of them are not reckless in the cartoonish way the internet likes to imagine. They are simply trapped inside a system they do not yet understand. And a system you do not understand can quietly own your life. I have spent decades studying money, building wealth, buying businesses, reading balance sheets, watching fear move markets, and watching ordinary people lose years, not because they were incapable, but because no one ever explained the game clearly enough. That is what I want to do here. Because if you do not understand what is really going on in this economy, you will keep blaming yourself for problems that were built into the machine long before you showed up. The source document opens with exactly the right shock. 7 out of 10 people are living paycheck to paycheck. And the message is not that those people are uniquely broken. It is that they are being left behind in a system that punishes the unplanned and rewards the automatic. Fayfalicite Fayturn 23, file 0 Fay, that is the right frame, because the first thing people need today is not shame, it is hope tied to truth. And the truth is this: we are living in what I would call an automatic economy. That phrase from the source is one of its strongest ideas. It says we now live in an automatic economy that can either make you rich or keep you poor, depending on whether automation is working for you or against you. Fayfalicite Fayturn 23, file 0 Fay, that is exactly right. The economy is automatic now. Your paycheck arrives automatically, your subscriptions leave automatically, your rent is drafted automatically, your credit card interest grows automatically. The streaming services, the apps, the memberships, the little recurring charges, the food delivery habits, the convenience culture, the monthly billing cycles, all of it is built to remove thought and replace it with frictionless extraction. That is what people do not see. They think they are losing money in random little ways. They are not, they are being out-automated. The machine has a plan for their paycheck before they ever see the paycheck. That is why the line in the source matters so much. Either you have a plan for your money or someone else has a plan for your money. Fayfalicite Fayturn 23, file 0 Fay, that is one of the most important personal finance sentences ever spoken, because if you do not build a system, you will still have one. It just will not be yours. It will be Netflix's system, the bank's system, the credit card company's system, the beauty subscription's system, the gym's system, the retailer's system, the app's system, the algorithm's system, and all of them, quite rationally, want the same thing. They do not want your money once. They want it forever. The source says this very well when it talks about lifetime value of a customer. Companies do not want a single purchase. They want a subscription relationship, an automatic claim on your income for as long as possible. Fayfalicite Fayturn 23, file 0 Fay. Exactly. That is why so many people feel as if they are working hard and somehow never getting ahead. It is not just inflation. It is not just bad luck. It is that they are standing in the middle of an economy designed to make every recurring expense feel normal and every act of saving feel inconvenient. That is why hope matters, because once you understand this, you stop thinking your life is random. You realize there is a system. And if there is a system, you can build a better one. Now, let me tell you the most important thing in the source document, and perhaps the most important thing a young person can hear today. There are 2 escalators to wealth in America. The source puts it bluntly: the system is rigged toward 2 asset classes, real estate and stocks, and if you do not own them, you are being left behind faster than ever. Fayfalicite Fayturn 23, file 0 Fay. That statement makes some people uncomfortable. Good. It should, because the world does not reward discomfort avoidance, it rewards clarity. And the clarity is this: if you spend your whole life only earning and spending, you remain on the labor treadmill. If you begin to own productive assets, you get onto the escalators. Those escalators are not perfect. They go up and down. They frighten people. They look rigged because in many ways they are. Tax laws favor investors. Housing incentives favor owners. Capital gains treatment favors ownership. Retirement accounts favor investing. The entire structure of modern wealth formation is built to advantage the people who own the machine, not just the people who work inside it. That is why I never tire of saying that if you are not becoming an owner, you are making life much harder than it needs to be. Not impossible harder. The source also says something else that matters enormously. It notes that investing has never been more democratized. A young person today can start investing tiny sums through apps and low-cost diversified funds in a way that simply was not accessible decades ago. File a site, turn 23 file 0 that is a huge piece of hope. Because some people hear stocks and real estate and assume the conversation is only for the already comfortable. Number, you can start small, painfully small, if necessary. The point is not the size of the beginning. The point is whether the direction changes. Now, I want to say something about hopelessness because I think it is one of the most expensive emotional states in money. Hopeless people stop looking. Hopeless people stop planning. Hopeless people tell themselves it is too late. The system is unfair. The rich already won. The market is rigged. Home ownership is impossible. Retirement is fantasy. And so they surrender. That surrender is devastating because once you surrender, the automatic economy takes over completely. The source is very strong on this point too. It says it's never too late unless you give up. And the emotional center of the whole conversation is about restoring hope as the first step toward action. File a site, turn 23 file 0 That is exactly the message I want people to hear. The worst thing you can do is conclude that because you started late or because you are broke. Now the answer is to do nothing. Nothing is the default. Nothing is the machine. If you want a different future, something has to be interrupted. Now let me tell you what the interruption looks like. It begins with a plan, not a glamorous plan, not a 10-tab spreadsheet with colors and a new identity attached to it. A real plan. A plan that says what must happen every time income arrives. The source calls this an automatic millionaire plan. It says people need money automatically routed toward what matters, their future emergencies and dreams, instead of allowing the paycheck to arrive and then vanish through the no plan. File site, turn 23 file 0 that is the right phrase. The no plan is what most people have. Their paycheck comes in, then it goes out. And every month feels like an emergency, even when nothing technically went wrong. That is not a life, that is a loop. The automatic millionaire plan breaks the loop. Now here is the idea from the source that people resist most at first and thank later. Pay yourself first. 1 hour a day of your income. That phrase is one of the strongest hooks in the source. It defines 1 hour a day of income as roughly 12.5% of gross pay and argues that this money should automatically go into retirement investing before the rest of life claims it. File a site, turn 23 file 0 That is exactly how I would explain it. The first hour of your workday should belong to your future, not to the landlord, not to the credit card company, not to impulse, not to convenience, to your future. Now people hear that and immediately panic. I cannot save 12%. I am paycheck to paycheck. I cannot breathe. I understand that reaction. But the source explains the hidden math correctly. When money goes into a pre-tax retirement account, you are not sacrificing the full amount dollar for dollar in take home terms because that contribution reduces taxable income. File site, turn 23 file 0 that matters, and the psychology matters too. If your employer came to you and said, we need to cut your pay by 10% to keep you employed, many people would stay and adjust. The source makes this exact argument and uses it to show that people are more capable of adjusting to slightly less take home pay than they imagine, especially when the change is automatic. File site, turn 23 file 0 that is one of the best parts of the whole conversation. People will reactively adjust to less when someone else imposes it. They rarely proactively adjust to less when the purpose is their own future. That is irrational. The future deserves at least as much respect as the employer. Now, if you cannot do 12% immediately, that does not mean you do nothing. The source says start with something, start at 1% if necessary, and increase gradually, even by 1% at a time, until the habit is installed. File site, turn 23 file 0 Exactly. You do not win by waiting until the plan feels easy. You win by starting before the plan feels perfect, 1% becomes 2, 2 becomes 3. Habits grow. This is how automatic wealth is built, not by heroics, by ratchets. Now let us talk about where that money should go, because this is another place people lose years. The source gives a very practical answer for workplace plans, target date mutual funds. It says most 401k plans offer them. They automatically adjust risk over time, and for 99% of people they are a perfectly solid default choice because they are diversified and simple. Fay file site Fay turn 23 file 2 Fay, that is exactly right. Simplicity compounds, complexity sells. A target date fund is not sexy. Good. It does not need to be sexy. It needs to be durable. If you are the kind of person who wants the simplest broad market answer, the source also points to total market index funds like VTI as a low, cost-diversified way to own the productive engine of the American market. Fay site Fay turn 23 file 1 Fay. Again, boring is beautiful here because boredom keeps people from doing stupid things. The source also warns strongly against the mistake young people make when they confuse taking risk with buying meme stocks, meme coins, or speculative garbage. It says many young investors save a little, gamble it away, conclude the game is rigged, and then stop investing altogether. Fay file site Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay, that is exactly the trap. Young people are told to be aggressive, so they become reckless. That is not the same thing. Real aggression for a young person is consistent ownership of productive assets over time, not trying to get rich in one lucky quarter. Now let me turn to one of the most powerful examples in the source, because great stories make ideas sticky. The $27.4 number. The source holds up $10,000 and asks how much you would need to blow per Dalton Y to waste that much in a year. The answer is $27.4 a day. Then it flips the question and shows that investing $27.4 a day, $10,000 a year for 40 years at about a 10% annual return leads to roughly $4.424 million. Fay file site Fay turn 23 file 1 Fay turn 23 file 4 Fay. That is one of the best illustrations in the entire personal finance world because it turns abstract drift into concrete destiny. $27.40 a day does not sound like a fortune, and that is exactly why it matters. People do not realize how much future gets traded for ordinary present convenience. Delivery food, ride shares, subscriptions, little leaks. The source explicitly says you have to go through your lifestyle and find where these small daily drains are hiding, because many people are burning that money without even realizing it. Fay file site Fay turn 23 file 4 Fay, that is exactly right. Not every problem is a salary problem. A lot of them are leakage problems, and leakage is wonderful to attack because leakage feels small in the moment and gigantic in hindsight. Now, let us turn to debt, because this is where shame becomes a prison. The source contains one of the most emotionally truthful passages in the whole file when it talks about opening credit card bills with your eyes covered, feeling sick at the balances, and realizing you spent money you did not have on things you did not need to impress people you did not know. It also says many people get out of debt and then get back in again, because debt is not just an event, it becomes a habit. Fay file site Fay turn 23, file 3 Fay, that is brutally true. Debt is not just arithmetic. Debt is behavior. Debt is identity. Debt is the gap between the life you are funding and the life you can actually afford. This is why the source S-dope system matters, done on last payment. It says to get every card out, print every statement, write down each balance, interest rate, minimum payment, and payoff timeline, and then start by killing the smallest balance first so you reduce the number of traps as fast as possible. It also warns strongly against store cards and the fake 10% discount bait that turns into outrageous interest later. Fay file site Fay turn 23, file 0 Fay turn 23, file 3 Fay. That is a very smart system. Not because it flatters spreadsheet logic, because it respects human morale. Every card you eliminate reduces mental clutter, late fee, risk, and emotional chaos. That matters. And the source adds another deeply practical move: automate minimum payments so you never get hit with late fees, and even call creditors to shift due dates so the billing cycle actually matches your paycheck rhythm. Fay file site Fay turn 23, file 0 Fay, that is adult money management. not admiring the problem, structuring the problem. Now let us talk about something else people desperately need but rarely build soon enough: security. The source says everyone needs an emergency account separate from retirement, separate from dreams. It recommends a liquid money market account and argues that this fund exists for emergencies only, not for trips or lifestyle upgrades. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. That is exactly right. A life without a security account is a life that gets pushed back onto debt every time ordinary reality shows up. Flat tire, medical bill, travel emergency, broken appliance, job interruption, without a buffer. Every surprise becomes a fresh wound. The source also gives a smaller but psychologically useful version of this through a 100-day savings challenge. Save $10 a day for 100 days and prove to yourself that you can build your first $1,000 of security. It even suggests that a visible jar can help, because seeing the progress changes the feeling. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 1 Fay turn 23 file 4 Fay. That is a wonderful idea. Because confidence matters, people who have never saved begin to think of saving as something other people do. You need small, visible wins to break that story. Now let us talk about dreams, because this is another part of the plan most people never structure. The source says that beyond retirement and emergencies, there should also be a dream account, a place for future goals between now and old age, whether that is a trip, a home down payment, or something else meaningful. It argues that dreams come true when they are funded. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. That is exactly right. Dreams are not wishes. Dreams are funded categories. That is why people stay stuck. They mix emergencies, retirement, and dreams into one vague emotional cloud, and then nothing gets clear enough to serve them. A plan separates time horizons, retirement, security, dreams. Each one gets its own lane. That is how money stops feeling chaotic. Now I want to address the people who think they missed the window, the 20-something with roommates and loans, the 50-something who is starting over after divorce, the widowed spouse who was never shown where the money was, the person who cashed out a 401k years ago and regrets it. The source speaks directly to all of these people. It says it is never too late unless you give up, and it gives concrete examples showing that even a late start with consistent daily savings can still produce meaningful wealth over 15 years or more. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. That is exactly the message I want people to hear. You may not have time for fantasy, fine. You still have time for progress. And progress is what changes lives. A person in her 50s who saves and invests consistently may not become what she could have been if she started at 22. That is irrelevant. The relevant question is whether she will arrive at 65 with something or with nothing. The source uses that logic powerfully when it asks whether $500,000 later is better than zero. Let's quote as it is. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. Exactly. This is where adults need to stop asking whether the plan is ideal and start asking whether the plan is better than surrender. Better than surrender wins every time. Now let us talk about home ownership, because the source is clear and right that ownership remains one of the biggest drivers of generational wealth. It says families that own homes build equity that can be inherited, while families that rent do not build that same form of net worth transfer. It also says the first home is usually not a dream home. It is smaller, less glamorous, and often less nice than what people wish they could rent. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. That is exactly right. The first home is not there to complete your identity. It is there to begin the escalator. People get themselves in trouble because they want the dream home first. The first home is often simply the first step into ownership. That is enough. Now I want to say something serious about partnership, widowhood, divorce, and family money, because the source goes there, and it is right to do so. It says the average age of widowhood is about 59, and that many women especially are left financially vulnerable because they were never fully involved in the accounts, the passwords, the wills, the 401ks, the insurance policies, and the overall money system. It also says bluntly that before divorce enters the room, you had better know where the money is, because if you do not know where it is, you will not get half of it. Fay file a site, Fay turn 23 file 0 Fay. That is hard advice, and it is correct. Love is not a financial plan. Trust is not a filing system. Every adult should be able to run the drill. If my spouse dies tomorrow, what would I need to know, and where is it? The source says the answer is everything: accounts, passwords, old 401, KS insurance, the will, all of it. It urges people to gather these things before crisis, not after. Faithful Esite Fay turn 23, file 0 Fay, that is one of the most compassionate forms of planning there is, because grief is hard enough without administrative chaos layered on top of it. Now let me bring all of this together as simply as I can. The automatic economy is real. It is already pulling money away from people who do not build a system. It is already rewarding people who automate ownership. You can hate that. You can call it rigged. You may be right. But while you are naming it, you also need to use it. Get on the escalators, stocks, real estate when it becomes possible. Build the emergency account, fund the dreams, kill the card traps, pay yourself first, automate the future before the present eats it. That is the real lesson here. Not that money is complicated, it is that drift is expensive and automation is powerful. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, start with 1%, start with $10, start with one account, start with one money date, start with one card paid off, start with one automatic transfer. The source ends in exactly the right place. Start something today, even if it is tiny, because the moment you automate one useful behavior, you begin changing your life. Faithful Esite Fay turn 23, file 0. Fay, that is the answer. You do not need one giant heroic move. You need to stop letting the machine run you by default. Once that changes, hope stops being a slogan. It becomes a system. And systems, unlike hope alone, can make people rich.